for joining us on another episode of the Plant Gene Podcast. I'm Kathleen Heffron. I'm a lecturer in the Department of Microbiology at Cornell University. The Plant Gene Project centers around the enhancement of plant genetic engineering to ensure a sustainable supply of food, feed, and fiber. In each podcast episode, we welcome esteemed leaders from academia and industry to share their experience and insight for the benefit of our listeners. Please share this space with your fellow plant science enthusiasts that will help us to bring exciting stories on the frontier, research in ag tech and plant science to our audience worldwide. So today I'm interviewing Ray Shillito. Ray is a pioneer in plant transformation and tissue culture, particularly protoplast development. Ray has also been fundamental in developing plant gene delivery techniques. Ray also likes to dabble in science communication, particularly for the plant biotechnology industry and how it interacts with trade and interaction or regulation. Welcome, Ray. So let me ask you first, could you summarize your work in a few sentences and what motivated you to pursue a career in this field?
Long ago, I got interested in, I was originally did a degree in special biochemistry, so quantitative biochemistry. And I was looking around for things to do, and being an avid gardener, I was interested in plants. And so I managed to get a PhD position in the University of Leicester with Professor Herbert Street, who was one of the pioneers in tissue culture. And so I did a PhD, and we were looking at various aspects of low density tissue culture, etc. Anyway, I got a postdoc in the lab of Dr. Shillito in Leiden in the Netherlands. And that's where I first met Agrobacterium and worked on Agrobacterium transformation while I was there. That was followed up by another postdoc with Dr. Ingo Podrikus, whose birthday was last week, actually. And he had built a group to work on transformation of plants, not using Agrobacterium, but looking at protoplasts, because there was a lot of interest in that. And we developed and showed that it was possible to transform plants without using Agrobacterium. And that was the first real solid demonstration of that. So that was with mainly with Jurek Paskowski and Mike Saul. So I was there about 5.5 years, and we did a lot of work. We did a lot of publications. It was a really fun time to be in that area. And then I moved across to the US to work on something a little bit more difficult than tobacco protoplasts, which is maize protoplasts. I was set to work to develop a maize protoplast system, and we did that. It was very difficult to do maize protoplasts, and we did manage to publish on that and get a fertile plant. And then, so I'd spent about 11 years there working on first protoplasts, then the gene gun and Agrobacterium transformation in maize, and leading a group there working on what we call the crazy people in the corner doing the edge of the seat stuff on maize transformation. They decided they didn't like me very much anymore in 87. And so, sorry, in 97, I'm sorry. And so I was let go, and I managed to find a job at Agrivo. They were looking for somebody to build their regulatory science group. And so I moved from the research to the development side. And that was actually an interesting move, because it allowed me then to follow these products into the market. At Agrivo then, and Aventis, Bayer Soft Crop, BASF. So a career path which involved 4 companies with basically the same desk through mergers and acquisitions. And I got interested in the whole downstream marketing and incident management as well. Is the right seed in the right place, things like that. I would say none of that was particularly planned. And one of the things that I would say to people, setting out, be open to opportunities. So I was just open to opportunities that came up, and they were interesting, and so I followed those opportunities. Many many times I've said, really, when I was at Bayer, I created my own job, my own position, because I saw things that were needed to be done and went out and did them, and then asked for forgiveness later. So at least in some cases you can do that. So that's where I ended up, and then I ended up looking in the last few years at what is the effect that gene edited crops in commerce, particularly in commodities, will have, particularly given the very fragmented regulatory environment there is out there.
Oh, fascinating. Okay, thank you. So, what are the tools and techniques and research questions you believe are going to be valuable for the next decade? There must be a few.
Well, I think the genome editing stuff, and I like to call it genome editing, but it's not just the genes. So the genome editing stuff is really going to make a huge impact. However, there's things you can't do just with genome editing, and what we've seen, with the regeneration genes, the Wushel, and all these other things that's come out, has been a really fantastic move that's helped us in doing transformations. So that's having a big impact, I think, particularly on the gramineous crops. So a combination of that and um, the ability to edit, and then the question is, the real challenge area is, it's very easy to make herbicide tolerant and insect tolerant crops. It's very difficult to make disease tolerant crops, and that's been the biggest issue that we've had in this field, and it's still not really getting there. Whether genome editing will help us in that, I don't know. So that's the one area. However, it's no good making any of this stuff if you can't then have a value capture. Companies not going to invest unless they can actually sell the seed. And what we've seen is a couple of trends. One trend we've seen is that people are working like Alka Capital and others on crops that are not commodity traded, so not moving around between countries, because that allows you then to market only in North America, for instance, and it avoids those huge regulatory systems in Europe that are basically overbearing and damaging the crop system in agriculture. And then if we don't get anything on genome editing sorted out, we're going to be in a worse situation there, because the trade in those products is going to be very difficult until we can get the regulatory environment sorted out on a global scale. And at the moment, it's a mess.
Okay.
So
All
those
right.
are the big issues.
Thank you. Moving into a different topic, I'm curious about how you manage your work-life balance. It must have been difficult doing all the things that you do and managing your life when you're not at work. So, any tips for listeners?
I think when I was a postdoc, I did overwork. Um, my wife was working when we were in Netherlands, and then when we went to Switzerland, she didn't. We had a child, and she elected to stay home for a few years until we got to the US, actually, and then she went back to work. So there was I had the advantage in a way that many people have had of a home base that was at least supporting me. Um, I think I gradually learned to not, be there forever, but it took me a long time. It took longer than it should, and so I would say in the last 15 years, learned a little bit more about work-life balance and doing that. But I did tend to have a lot of things going on, and probably known for that. One of the things I did when I was in industry over the last, however long it's been, was, I would say over the last 15 years or so, was every year in January, I would look at what I was doing, and I'd take the 5 jobs or so that I was doing, and I'd try and get rid of one to somebody else. And so I said I had 5 jobs at a time. So I would always also I'd look at my priorities in January of each year and say, what things, can I do or not need to be doing? And so that was something that really helped, I think, in the later years of get that balance. And I think if I'd done that maybe earlier, I would have benefited, but I wouldn't have done as much stuff. So I tend to get a lot interested in a lot of things at the same time. Um, and so I tend to be involved in a lot of things. And I did a lot of collaborative work with others as well. And so, it's a question is, what do I need to do, especially when you get into an industry position, a more senior position? What do I need to do? What can I get other people to do?
Okay, that's a great way to manage your life. Yeah, I think that's a really important. Now, talking about Plant Gene, you're a member of Plant Gene. What impact do you hope Plant Gene will have on transformation?
I think I've been pleasantly shocked at the number of people that Plant Gene has attracted globally. It's functioning in a way that you see hundreds of people on these meetings, and so I think it allows people from other countries to access um, what we're doing, in maybe in Europe and the US, particularly in the US, where we have more resources, maybe we have the companies that are driving this. Um, and so that really brings in the people from other countries into that in a way that it's not really been done before. I think even though SIVB is an international organization, we never had that penetration globally that Plant Gene has achieved. It's been amazing.
Yeah, it has been. Okay, thanks for that answer. And another question for you is regarding your skills with science communication. What
Mhm.
role do public perceptions and understanding play in your field, and how do you address misconceptions? There are quite a few, I guess.
Yeah, agricultural biotechnology has been a major fail, I would think, in communication. Um, I think the way that the products were marketed to farmers without having that communication to the consumer allowed the NGOs to get in a situation they are now. Um, and we are still fighting that. I mean, you see golden rice, that's such a sad story. That's still being fought. It's I think there are some things that we've learned that we should say, we should accept that people have concerns and not just reject them. And that's something that we need to do in communication. It's difficult to do. I have quite a few, I would say, conversations and I'm in a native plant group on Facebook, for instance, where people say, well, you shouldn't use glyphosate. Well, hey, if you want to destroy the invasive plants, it's about the best way to do it. And so there's some people that, I had a very positive one last week that somebody said, okay, I look at, I look at your experience. I say, maybe you've got, and it's your, but I'm not going to make the choice to do that. But at least they accepted that there was another position. And, and so I think we can make small moves, small things like that. I don't feel that I have a major role in that. I just do what I can among certain groups that I'm with. I think, I think, I feel I should maybe go back out to schools again. I used to do when my daughter was in high school. I used to do the science group there, science lunch talks a couple of times, and it was really fun doing the biotechnology one and telling them, all the positives. And I don't think we haven't got that sustainability and positive um, story across at all well.
No, no. Yeah, it's difficult to penetrate the dialogue when there's a lot of miscommunication going on or you know
Well, disinformation. The problem is
misinformation.
people who are doing that, that's their full-time job.
Yes, yeah,
But the rest of us have something else to do,
right.
uh, and so all the people who really, like yourself or Wayne Power or other people like that, they've got a job to do every day. They're busy and they can't spend 100% of their time, like the NGOs can. They have people whose job is nothing else but to cause trouble.
Yeah. So do you think just in terms of how communication has gone? it must impact trade and regulation. Do you think
Absolutely.
genome editing is going to be a brighter have a brighter picture than what we've seen
I,
with transgenic?
I think what you see going on in Europe right now is a sad reflection of what we're seeing in that, the scientists are all, EFSA, everybody else agrees it's, what should be done. But then we have groups that are just using, lawsuits, etc., to stop that. And we've just seen in the the USDA laws have just been challenged.
Right.
Regulations just been challenged last week. Again, it's a matter of resources, and the opposition is has got a lot of resources. The people in between, the food processors and the millers and all those folks, they just don't want to get involved. And so they stand at the wayside. And if they can make a marketing move to sell something that's non-GMO, they'll do that. And you see that with the non-GMO project. You know, fear sells. There's nothing else you can do about it. There's nothing you can do about that. Fear is a very strong marketing term, and unfortunately, that's been used to sell products that that I don't personally buy. But there you go.
Right, right. I see. Do you feel that for a young scientist, do you feel a difference in terms of how they may be perceived by the public if they were in academia versus in industry? Is that noticeable to you or about the same?
I think there's a really strong attempt to tar industry. So as soon as you get, and you see this on social media, at a certain point, people say, "Oh, well, you worked for, and therefore you must be a shill," and especially with my name. But they, which is funny, I find it hilarious. Immediately, you get to that point where, oh well, you've got to, and I say, well, you're a member of Greenpeace, then you've got a position too. So the conflict of influence is only perceived in one direction. As far as a young scientist getting into this, I see a lot of excitement in young scientists in industry with this technology. So maybe, at least in the US, I think in Europe it's probably more difficult. I see, for instance, BSF has a research facility in Ghent in Belgium, and I think there's some difficulty in hiring people because of that. I wouldn't. It's not my personal knowledge of that, but I just get the feeling there are enough, but it may be a little bit of an issue that that people don't want to be seen maybe working for these people who are making GMOs. And I don't know how that's going to change. I think the younger people in general have a more positive view than maybe their parents did due to the disinformation that was spread at that time. So I'm hopeful.
Hopeful, yeah.
I'm
I
hopeful.
think I, I teach a lot of students. I think that these are very challenging times, but I think that these are very cool times in terms of
Mm.
science. There's so many interesting things to do and directions to go. So
There
hopefully,
was there was a very interesting initiative on LinkedIn about the PhD in industry. I don't know if you saw those posts.
no, I didn't.
Somebody was talking about using a PhD in industry and how they can be extremely relevant and valuable. And I think that's something that we should not forget, and maybe we should then bring that forward a little more. Those PhDs in industry, it is really valued because when you do a PhD, it's not about the PhD, it's about learning how to develop and handle knowledge. And so those skills themselves are important for industry to employ.
That's a
I'm
really
not saying you need a PhD, but there is some certain value to it.
absolutely okay.
Mm.
Well, thank you. Thanks very much for this interview. I really appreciate it, and hope you have a good rest of your day. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity.
Bye.
PlantGene would like to thank the National Science Foundation for their support. To learn more, please visit their website at nsf.gov.